Welcome to the Sleep is a Skill podcast. My name is Molly McLaughlin, and I own a company that optimizes sleep through technology, accountability, and behavioral change. Each week, I'll be interviewing world-class experts ranging from doctors, innovators, and thought leaders to give actionable tips and strategies that you can implement to become a more skillful sleeper. Let's jump into your dose of practical sleep training. Welcome to the Sleep is a Skill podcast. I am super excited to share my guest with you today because I actually have a personal relationship with this guest. She is a real pioneer in the area of hormones and how that can impact our health and well-being. But of course, in this podcast, we're going to discuss how that can impact your sleep. So actually, Alisa Vitti, she wrote Women Code. She has created this whole community for women to be able to better understand their cycles and essentially understanding your infradian rhythm and what that can do to impact all kinds of things, including our sleep. So I had stumbled upon her book when I was trying all the things to restore my sleep. And she was actually partly responsible for totally cleaning out the type of, products that I use, the makeup that I use, all of the things that I'm, putting on my body to be more responsible for understanding how that can impact the endocrine system and how that relates to my overall, health and vitality. So we're going to look at a little bit about her. Now, Alisa Vitti is a women's hormone and functional nutrition expert and pioneer in female biohacking. She is the best-selling author of Women Code, and in her new book, In the Flow, she is the creator of Cycle Syncing Method, a female-centric diet and lifestyle program that leverages hormonal patterns for optimal health, fitness, and productivity. Now, as the founder of FloLiving.com, she has built the world's first menstrual healthcare platform that helps women around the world put their period issues like PCOS, fibroids, endometriosis, and PMS into remission naturally using her highly effective Flow protocol and the Flow Balance supplements. Finally, Alisa is also the creator of My Flow Period app, the first and only functional medicine period tracker designed to help users eliminate symptoms and schedule their lives according to their cycles. It is consistently ranked in the top 10 of paid apps in the health and fitness category on iTunes. She's also a graduate of Johns Hopkins University and the Institute of Integrative Nutrition. Alisa has been featured in the New York Times, on the Dr. Oz show, Lifetime, and has been a regular contributor to Cosmo, Harper's Bazaar, and Women's Health. She has served on the Wellness Council for Yahoo Health, Mind Body Green, and Well and Good. She was selected as Pure Wow 100 Women to Watch in 2018 and Thrive Global's 12 Women Entrepreneurs Changing the World in 2019. She's also an advisor to several health tech startups. She has presented at South by Southwest, TEDx, talks at Google, Summit Series Outside, Cycles and Sex, and the She Summit, and regularly trains women in the workplace on how to use her cycle syncing method for greater creativity, productivity, and well-being at work. So let's dive in. And welcome to the Sleep is a Skill podcast. I am so grateful to have my guest here today. Thank you so much for taking the time.
I'm so happy to be here, Molly.
Well, thank you very much. And this is an exciting opportunity for me to get to have you on the show because we got to be acquainted a while back when actually I was going through my difficulties with my own sleep and my journey around how to restore.
And your hormones.
Exactly. And, really even getting into this conversation around how my behaviors, how my products that I'm using, how, as a totality and a holistic viewpoint, all the things that I am personally doing that I have control over, that I can actually have a say in my hormones, my sleep, my state of being. What I really got out of some of the teachings that you offer in your various, so the book that I had read, this was a few years back. And then now all the things that you've given to this conversation are extensive. So I can't wait to dive in and get to, share all of this goodness and learn more myself on this topic. So, just number one, thank you for all the contribution that you give in this area.
Well, it's my pleasure. I mean, I think that we as women are just not really taught how our hormones work. And of course, your sleep is really governed by your hormones. So we can't really talk about sleep without talking about hormones. And usually when women have hormonal imbalances, their sleep is one of the early signs of some of these symptoms that they'll have. But we're taught that those things are disconnected. And so we kind of run around chasing wild geese, trying to figure out how to help ourselves when the solution is always much more simple and elegant and efficient when you know what is going on and what to do.
So well said. Yeah. So I think it would be great to even start at the beginning, as far as you're hearing a bit more about your story and your commitment on this topic, because I know you have so much to share in this area. And it's something where you've created for yourself a bit of your own tribe of women that are beginning to discover more about themselves through understanding this relationship with their hormones, but also being able to manage their lives newly. And you've some really unique ways of helping people navigate this. So I'd love to hear more about about your story on this.
Well, I myself struggled with hormone issues, in my teens and early 20s, and it led me to really see the limitations in conventional gynecology when it comes to treating chronic hormonal issues like PCOS, fibroids, endometriosis, and other menstrual disorders like painful periods or irregular cycles, et cetera. And seeing that for myself, being a patient on the receiving end of what limited care is available for women, which is just pretty unacceptable in the sense that
Yeah.
there's no fix, there's no cure, there's just kind of like using other medications that are not actually designed for the treatment of these things. They were designed for other things like preventing pregnancy or treating high blood pressure or managing diabetes, but then they're used in a way as like hoping that some of their side effects will also help deal with some of your symptoms, but it doesn't actually fix what is wrong with you. And of course, the only way to really get at fixing your hormones properly is to really start to recalibrate the endocrine system through food. And so I have dedicated my career to researching and understanding the nuances of hormones and the endocrine system. And now in my new book, In the Flow. And so, of course, I wrote all about the protocol that I created 20 years ago called the Flow Protocol. That's in my first book, Woman Code, which has become, for a lot of women, their hormone Bible. And then in my new book, In the Flow, it's the first book to share with the world the concept of the infradian rhythm, which is really, really important for women because we all know about our circadian rhythm, and women in their reproductive years, turns out, have a second biological rhythm called the infradian rhythm, and it impacts so many systems of the body. And all of this is to really help women understand that there is so much information that you can have access to, that once you have access to, all of the propaganda about how being a woman and having the monthly curse and like suffering is inevitable and all this stuff, it just completely falls apart in the face of the actual science. And that you have so much agency over how you feel in your body as a woman, and that in fact nature designed you to feel fantastic.
Mm. Oh, wow. So, this is fantastic that you are expanding this conversation and helping to go deeper on what could be there that many people are not even considering. So, I loved you did touch on this infradian rhythm. And I'm wondering if you could share more about this, because for many people, they're not even connected to what that looks like. And if you could help educate a bit more, going a bit deeper on that.
Yeah. So, as I said, the circadian rhythm, we all know it's something that you experience over the course of 24 hours, and it helps with managing, let's say, your sleep patterns and your bowel movements, and it affects different systems of your body. Well, this infradian rhythm is the cycle that you experience over 28 days, but it goes beyond your reproductive cycle. It affects your brain, your metabolism, your immune system, your stress response system, your microbiome, and your reproductive system. And so when I teach women about this, it's really amazing because they see, oh, I now understand why I seem to have all these symptoms that aren't connected, but through the lens of the infradian rhythm, which we are actively disrupting. And I'll tell you how you may be doing that in a minute. All of those symptoms that you may be chasing different solutions for are completely connected. So we know, for example, not to disrupt our circadian rhythm, right? We know it's really, really bad for you to go to sleep for 5 minutes and then be up for 3 days, right? That's going to cause disruption short term. And then if you continue that pattern, it's going to really, mess up your health quite a bit for the long term. So in the same way, when you disrupt the infradian rhythm, you're going to negatively impact all of these 6 systems of the body. And that's pretty important because a foundational piece of you feeling good as a woman is to really take care of this infradian rhythm. So how you may be disrupting it is, of course, something that you'll come by very honestly. And here's why. It turns out that the vast majority of medical fitness and nutrition research is based on men. Mm-hmm. And so what that means is that certainly that's why, your menstrual disorders are not being studied, right? So there's some gender bias in the research. And of course, that's why I built FloLiving to help women have a place where they can go from anywhere in the world to help deal with their hormone problems and their period problems. So really proud of that.
Yeah.
But also, from a fitness and nutrition research point of view, everything that you will then hear about in the media, high intensity interval training is the gold standard for your fitness regime, or intermittent fasting is like the best thing to protect your health long term. It actually turns out that those things for women who have an active infradian rhythm are disrupting to the infradian rhythm and make you sick. They hurt you. And I go into great detail about this in the book so that you understand exactly why. Mm-hmm. But at the highest level, the research shows that for men and postmenopausal women, intermittent fasting gives all the benefits that you've heard of, from increased cellular autophagy to promoting longevity, improved cognitive function, and improved insulin sensitivity. For women in the reproductive years, it has the extreme opposite effect. It worsens insulin sensitivity, it decreases cognitive performance, and it can do things like shrink your ovaries and disrupt your thyroid. So you do not want to do intermittent fasting if you still have a period. Once you're postmenopausal, you definitely do, right? And then high intensity interval training, it turns out that studies are pretty conclusive that after the ovulatory phase, if you continue to do high intensity interval training after ovulation, you will turn on fat storage and turn on muscle wasting. And this is why for most women, they feel so frustrated at the end of every month, like, I'm being so diligent, I'm doing all the workouts I'm supposed to be doing. And at best, at the end of the month, you make no progress in your lean muscle gain or your fat store utilization, or at worst, you gain weight. Either one of those things will definitely happen if you do the wrong workouts at the wrong time for your infradian rhythm. And this is something, aligning with your biological rhythm is not new technology. It's just that no one knows about the infradian rhythm. And so we're all, as women, operating as if we only have a circadian rhythm. Mm-hmm. And then we're, of course, using diet and fitness programs that have only been researched on men, and they disrupt our infradian rhythm. And we have all sorts of health issues, from mood disorders to weight issues to period problems to libido issues to sleep issues, anxiety, depression. All of these things are a result of you disrupting this biological rhythm, period, pun intended. And it's so important that if you are someone who's interested in, the optimization of yourself as a human being, that you have to consider your gender-based biological rhythms because they are different. And you should not, if you're in a heterosexual relationship, you should not, for example, wake up at the same time as your male partner. Why? Well, actually, the female brain, for example, is vastly more complex than the male brain and requires every night 20 minutes more of sleep to go through its self-cleaning process. And so, but for men, because they make all their testosterone while they're sleeping, they must wake up at as early as they can, 5 a.m. ideally, to take full advantage of their testosterone surge and cortisol surge to do their workout, to start doing their deep work, to really take on the day. And then around 3 o'clock, start socializing when they have their testosterone drop and organizing their day around their hormonal biological rhythm, which follows the circadian pattern, optimizes their health, optimizes their mood, optimizes their brain function, optimizes their fitness, optimizes their sex life, optimizes all these systems of the body. And that's why corporate culture is organized that way, because it was organized for men. When is happy hour? Happy hour is when men no longer have the ability to concentrate at 3 o'clock, right? Unless they're using nootropics, which is why biohacking is so popular among men, because men are taught from a young age to understand how their bodies work so they can use them as a tool to master their environment. And little girls are taught, and this is a quote from Gloria Steinem, little girls are taught from a young age to view their bodies as an unending project to work on, right? Little boys are taught to know their bodies, and little girls are taught to kind of view it in this kind of wary way of, sort of being disconnected from it. And boys are taught to be very connected to it. And it really plays out pretty profoundly as you go throughout your life in a way that you don't thrive physically. And that has a profound effect on how you perform in your life as a person.
Oh my goodness. Well, so number one, even just in hearing you speak, I'm left with this sense of really a level of almost being a pioneer in this area. And that was what I was struck with even back a few years back when reading your work and, following what you're really standing for, which is taking control for women, taking control of their hormones, and by method or means of really getting connected to their days in a way that is unique from the way that men have known to, take control of their days. And what's so powerful here, it's wonderful. So, I think there's so much that we can glean from this. And, in my own personal experience with some of your work, I remember just being so struck by certain things around the humanity and the grace of giving yourself, like operating differently throughout different times of your month based on where your rhythm and where you're falling. So what that could look like is there's certain times in the month that are more optimal to do certain types of workouts, and the ebb and the flow that could look like, that's a small example, but what that can then result in the rest of our lives and our health can be so profound. And what is really, really important here too, because I'll have so many women that come in through Sleep as a Skill, and they will, they'll be doing all the biohacking things, and they'll see their body temperature going up and down in this really count onable rhythm to a degree, throughout when they're measuring their sleep and seeing, these very distinct patterns that are quite different from what men are seeing. And that's one of the black and white examples of the difference that we experience each month. And then, but then to help to enrich the conversation of what does this mean? How can we reorganize our days to support this change that men are not even in the conversation of? And of course, we know that there's women in different phases. There's childbearing specific ages, and then there's postmenopause. And so there's a lot of confusion on where we fall in these different times in our life. So I'm curious if you could go a little bit deeper. If, women are coming to you and I cannot sleep. I just cannot sleep. And I know there's so many things to begin, but what are some of the ways that you might have them kind of a top-down approach if at different points? And I know there's, maybe if they're going through menopause and then post-menopause, but if you could start to break down a little bit of what you see when you hear people talking about sleep disturbances and what there is to do.
Certainly. So I don't want to leave anybody hanging, though, before we answer that question about, with the infradian rhythm, the next logical question I think someone might have is, well, how do I support that? And in the book, in the flow, what I don't just paint the picture frame around, the fact that women are being left out of research and it's a big problem, and teach about just the infradian rhythm. I also wanted to create a revolutionary way for women to support their infradian rhythm because, again, it's the most efficient root cause way to address a vast variety of symptoms, including sleep issues. And that solution that I created is called the cycle syncing method. And essentially what that is that based on the measurable, actual changes that are taking place 4 times throughout the month with your metabolism, with your cortisol levels, with your caloric needs, and with the structural changes in the brain, certain regions of the brain being affected in different ways by hormone concentrations. We then modify, change what you're eating 4 times a month. We change which workouts you're doing 4 times a month, and we change your sort of project focus 4 times a month so that you can get more out of your day. Certainly, you can continuously build energy, and that you can really make sure that you are not doing anything to disrupt this infradian rhythm and constantly drain your energy and add stress to your system, so that whatever symptoms you're having, whether it be PMS or mood issues or sleep issues or libido issues, they just evaporate relatively quickly. Because again, you can imagine, what this feels like when you either, to whatever degree you support or not support your circadian rhythm. If you sleep for 5 hours, right? You know that you're going to have a day that's where you're feeling a little sluggish and a little cranky and a little bit behind the 8 ball, and you might not be able to do the workout you want to do, and you may not be able to really do all the projects you want to do, right? And your sleep may feel even disrupted. You may feel tired but wired that night. But let's say the next day you're able to get 8 hours of sleep, and then that following day you're able to just crush it in every area of your life, from taking care of your health to your workouts to your actual productivity at work, right? So it's the same. The degree to which you can support your infradian rhythm with food, fitness, and work is the degree to which you will have more or less energy and more or less symptoms across these 6 systems of the body. And it's just so important that you get that. You should stop asking yourself the question of, well, what should I eat and which workout should I do? And you should forever ask yourself the question of when do I do it? And when you do what is all listed chart by chart in this new book, from which foods to eat, to which workouts to do, to which projects to focus on. There's even charts for relationships, for work, for motherhood. All of this to help make it so easy, because it's all based on which phase of the cycle that you're in. And of course, I built an app to help you know which phase of the cycle you're in and to prompt you to understand which of the pieces of the cycle syncing method you should apply at that time. And that app is called MyFlow, and you can download that at myflowtracker.com. And you asked a question, Molly, about, well, what if somebody is pregnant or having children, or what if they're perimenopausal? What if they're menopausal? How does this apply? And then you also asked about what about sleep? So, depending on your life, which hormonal life stage you're in, you may or may not be able to use the cycle syncing method. So if you are, let's say, in your childbearing years where you are pregnant or breastfeeding and not menstruating, then you cannot cycle sync because you don't have a cycle to sync to, right? And so you'd want to just take care of yourself. And I have, recommendations about that in the book. There's specific things that you'd want to do depending on if you just gave birth or where you are in the process. If you're perimenopausal, perimenopause has 2 stages, 35 to 45 and 45 to 55. And those are approximate ranges, but everyone starts perimenopause at 35. It's a slow, long process. And so in that first stage, you absolutely want to continue to use the cycle syncing method, because for 2 reasons. One, it's going to help you keep symptoms at bay, and it's going to really set you up to have a very healthy postmenopausal experience. Again, just like we know the women from the famous nurses study, those that disrupted their circadian rhythm for long periods of time postmenopausally had the greatest disease factors for the disease of inflammation, right? So similarly, we know from the biocycle study that the NIH put together that women who have untreated PMS in their reproductive years actually put themselves at greater risk for the big disease of inflammation postmenopausally. So the degree to which you disrupt your infradian rhythm while you have it active can set you up to be less healthy once you no longer have it. Because that's the thing. Once you hit menopause, then your infradian rhythm stops. It's no longer active and you go back to a circadian biological rhythm only environment. And so that's why you can, take advantage of the intermittent fasting that, is being talked about, 17-hour fasts and all these things, right? So it's important to know which life stage you're in. It's important to know how to navigate it. And I go into detail about that in the book. Specifically about sleep, sleep is a really interesting thing. I think there are probably 4 hormonal causes of insomnia or sleep issues. And I can break those down for you. I mean, the first one I would look at is adrenal dysregulation. Anytime you have elevated levels of cortisol or when you're overtaxing the adrenal glands, other hormones will become dysregulated, right? And that's going to affect your ability to sleep. So I think that is something that you want to be looking at. What is your stress level? How are you managing that? Are you, for example, here's a way that you could disrupt your adrenals and not know it. During the second half of your cycle, the luteal and the menstrual phases, you have higher levels of resting cortisol. If you do a workout that's longer than 30 minutes, if you are already stressed and you already have insomnia, or you're, let's say, in your perimenopausal years, you're going to burn through your adrenal reserve. You're going to have something happen called a pregnenolone steal, which is going to decrease the serum concentration of progesterone. And progesterone is a critical hormone that helps you relax during luteal phase and has a sedative effect. And without enough of that, you won't be able to fall asleep at night, right? So like I said, that's why we spent so much time talking about the cycle syncing method and the infradian rhythm, because you could be saying to yourself, okay, yes, I have low progesterone. How do I fix that? If you don't support all the phases of your cycle, you're only going to get so far with, just taking vitamin B6, for example, to support your progesterone production, because you're going to keep draining your adrenal reserve in other ways, right? By, for example, overusing caffeine or not having enough micronutrients to support your system as a whole. Everything is connected and works synergistically. So I really hate spot treating things. I don't think it's effective. And I think it's a waste of money for most people. So you've got to really think about, are you committed to being healthy? And if you are, then it looks the way that it looks. It's you're either all in or you're not.
I love that.
There are no quick fixes, none that I've seen in 20 years of doing this work. Okay. So that's sort of one. I think another one is this PMS related insomnia. And again, it's similar. It's just, it may not be kicked off by the adrenal glands, meaning you're not experiencing a lot of stress. You're not having some sort of stress cascade that's causing you to be wired at the wrong time of day. Like, when your adrenal glands aren't functioning properly, it can really disrupt your ability to have a healthy circadian rhythm. So with PMS related insomnia, it's really about, and it can be whether you're in your 20s, it can be over 35. It tends to be a little bit more common for women over the age of 35. But it has to do with the fact that if you have too much estrogen relative to progesterone, which is what PMS is, that estrogen dominance and that not enough progesterone, which, as I said before, promotes relaxation, et cetera, you're not going to be able to fall asleep. So, that's another cause. I would say that's another way to look at it. If you have had a long history of PMS and now you're over 35 and you're thinking to yourself, why can't I fall asleep the week before my period? Well, it's just a new symptom of worsening PMS that needs to be addressed, sort of as a whole system, right? Like you have to look at the whole cycle. You just can't try to spot treat the week before your period. So it can either come down the cascade of adrenal dysregulation, it can come down the cascade of PMS, it can come down the channel of perimenopause. So again, this perimenopause can have many different, let's say, starting problems. It could be, for example, you could be having perimenopause symptoms that are more significant because you didn't recover properly from childbirth. You're sort of micronutrient deficient, or let's say you did not have children and you're perimenopausal, you could have been on oral contraception or some form of synthetic birth control for decades. That's going to deplete your micronutrients. If you don't have enough B vitamins, magnesium, vitamin D3, omega-3s, all of these things in your system at adequate levels, you're not going to be able to keep hormones stable, and you're going to age prematurely from a hormonal point of view. And your perimenopause can be like PMS on steroids, and you can have very significant insomnia during this time, which again is not something that you can't fix, but it's going to take things like taking supplements, really working with the phases of your cycle to make sure you're not overstimulating your adrenal glands at the wrong time with intense workouts. You're going to have to work with your nutrition to keep blood sugar stabilized. You may even have to take very low doses of melatonin because that hormone also drops in production as we get older. So there's a lot of things here that can be a factor, but perimenopause is definitely a place where women really start to experience this. And there's so much that you can do to make that better. And then I would say the fourth one is the postpartum time, right? Having a newborn is definitely disruptive to anybody's sleep because
Yes.
they can't, babies don't have the ability to regulate their blood sugar for the first 5 months or so. It depends, can be 12 weeks, but sometimes can take a little longer. And so they'll wake up every 2 to 3 hours to eat, to nurse, or to have a bottle. And you have to do that. Now, that can be pretty disruptive to your sleep, and it's going to make you tired. And there's not much that you can do except try to figure out a solution that works for you.
Right.
So, meaning, maybe you don't, if you're not nursing, then, you've got to find someone who will do some of the feeds with you at night, like your partner, so that you only wake up, let's say, once, and your partner wakes up once, and hopefully that gets you through the night. And then you may, if you are nursing, you may have the ability to start at that 12-week process, at that 12-week interval, to really start to wean the baby from night feedings, as many night feedings, if that's something that you're comfortable with. At the same time, if you're able to, and you're taking, maternity leave for a few months, those first 3 months, just sleep when the baby sleeps. It's the best advice I can give any mom whose sleep is disrupted, because that's just part of the deal. So, sleep during the day when you can. If you're home anyway, you might as well take advantage of that. And then after that first 12-week period, you can start to put together a routine that feels more sustainable as you go back to work, however that looks for you.
Wow. So this was fantastic. I'm taking notes as you're speaking, and there's just so much gold here. And I think one of the things that you help really map out for women in a way that's just so distinct and unique is this totality of this conversation, that there's so many things to consider. And for women that are stressed and tired and, just want to sleep, many of these things could go unseen or overlooked, and you help really provide this ability to dig in deep. And I love the way you've organized some of your books and your offerings because they really help get in at what is going on deeper. So one of the other things I thought was really interesting that you really help underscore is how much of there can be such a systemic situation that's happening here, even straight to some of the products that we're using, even topically that we're taking in, air quality, all kinds of things that could be impacting how we're feeling. And so for some people, this can be such a foreign conversation. And I'm wondering if you could share more about even in so through your books and your different courses and all the things that you have available in the apps, what that kind of process begins to look like for women when they are struggling with these problems. They might fit into, one of those 4 areas that you laid out with their sleep difficulties, and they know, okay, yes, I need help with this. What would that experience look like? And because it is a whole thing, it's a behavioral shift that many behavioral shifts that you help, people walk
Yeah.
through. So share more.
Yeah. I mean, and I know that you've been through the process. So
Yes.
the good thing about it is that there's a lot of information. Yes. I don't want you to be concerned that you need to have the same encyclopedic, kind of knowledge base. I've dedicated my career to this, so I should know enough to talk to you about it. But at the same time, I've wanted to make it really easy and manageable for you. So one of the key things that I've built outside of the app is a program called Flow 28. And this is our cycle syncing method membership where you have everything delivered to you in a way that it helps you understand, all these different parts of your cycle and the infradian rhythm and which things you should be doing when. It gives you grocery lists and meal plans and recipes. It delivers workout videos to you based on the phase of your cycle. It basically takes all the guesswork out of everything. You don't have to really learn. You just have to do it. And so, because I know that everybody's busy, so you don't have to do anything. You don't have to learn anything new if you don't want to, but the science is all explained in case you want to geek out.
Right.
But what you want to just do is do the things that you're supposed to do when you're supposed to do them and start to really feel the difference. And by doing them, you will start to get that connection to your body back. You'll be like, oh yeah, this is how I'm feeling. And wow, I feel so much better. And wow, my energy is sustained and I'm not having PMS. And who knew that this could be my reality? And it can be, and it can be very quickly. Most women feel things within the first 2 to 3 cycles, if not some things right away. So that's the first place to start. And then I would say the second place to start is to really boost your micronutrients. So I have, again, because I've spent 20 years working in private practice and researching, I formulated my own set of supplements that are all the micronutrients that the endocrine system absolutely needs in order to function properly so that you can make enough progesterone to fall asleep at night, so that you can support your melatonin production and stabilize your mood and maximize your vitamin D3 levels and all of those things. It's all, again, done for you. So you just have to take the supplements and not worry about it. And then third, I would say it's really important to do a couple of things to support sleep. I would say one of the best things you can do if you're struggling with sleep is to ditch coffee altogether.
Yeah.
I have a whole article on my blog, and actually I wrote about it in the book as well. Caffeine is a very powerful substance, and it's actually something that a particular gene makes an enzyme for in your body to break it down. And only 50% of the population has the gene without the mutation where they can make enough of this enzyme. So a lot of women with hormone issues, also, there's another variation of this gene that also helps with estrogen metabolism. And it tends to come together where if you're struggling with hormone issues and PMS, you also are likely not to have enough of this enzyme to break down caffeine. And the gene is the CYP1A2 gene. If you have a mutation in that gene, you're not going to make enough enzyme to break down caffeine, which means that, normally the half-life of caffeine is anywhere from 6 to 12 hours in the body to break down. So that morning cup of coffee can be with you till dinner time.
Yes.
But if you have this CYP1A2 gene mutation, it will be with you till the next day or
Mm.
longer because you just don't make enough of this enzyme. And so you can imagine what it might be like to try to get to sleep. And in addition, because you don't make enough of this enzyme, your body is going to recruit other micronutrients via the liver to try to detoxify your system so that you don't go into caffeine toxicity, which is a real thing you can look up on the Mayo Clinic
Yes.
website. So, I would definitely ditch coffee. If you are perimenopausal and having insomnia of any sort, get off the black coffee. It is just, I don't care if you're upgrading it with butter or whatever. It's not good. It's not good for you. It's just not
Yeah.
good for you. So there are other substitutes. I have them all listed in the book and on the blog. So you can start to really step that down.
Oh, so great.
Again, with the supplements, you're going to be boosting your magnesium, you're going to be boosting progesterone production. So I'm not going to talk about that. But the other couple of things that I think you can really do to help you with sleep, there are 3 techniques that I think are really, really effective. One is breath work, specifically yoga nidra, which you can Google. There's a wonderful program called Daring to Rest that teaches people this breath work.
Yes.
That's really excellent. You can do it in the morning and it will help you sleep better at night. It's remarkable. And so that's something that you can really check out. Another thing to help you with sleep is minimizing your exposure to blue light at night, which is, of course, everything that you're looking at when you're watching your television or your iPad or whatever you're looking at, your screens, right? You've got to wear blue light blocking glasses.
Yeah.
At least, after dinner,
Mm-hmm.
and I wish that someone would just build machines that have the screens that instead of us having to wear them as glasses, that they would just be like already on the phone or on your laptop, because we shouldn't even be looking at them during the day.
Yes.
But certainly at night, you got to start. If you're somebody who's watching things in bed to wind down, great. You can even buy reading lights that are made with special light that is not blue. So it's really excellent if you're going to be reading books before bed. That's great. So got to really do that. And then the last thing is you've got to flush cortisol. And one of the best ways that you can do that is by practicing getting into your orgasmic plateau, not climax, but your orgasmic plateau. And I go through, you have to know what your 4 stages of your sexual response are. One of them is orgasmic plateau. One of them is climax. One of them is the refractory period. The other one is tumescence. You have to learn how your body works. Again, in order for you to biohack,
Yes.
you have to know what you're working with, right? So much of what we think biohacking is like, oh, do this flotation tank, go into this infrared
Right.
sauna, take this nootropic, add butter to your coffee. It's all this additive stuff. But actually, because you have 2 X chromosomes, nature has imbued you with some of the most powerful biological tech that you could have access to from an immunological point of view, from a cortisol flushing point of view. You have 8,000 nerve endings on your clitoris that, if stimulated properly, will flush massive amounts of cortisol from your system super fast. And if you know how to do that properly, again, that's usually not with a vibrator, because vibrators take you right past orgasmic plateau, right to climax, where you do not flush cortisol as much. You can flush this cortisol and you can get to sleep.
Preach.
You know what I mean? You've got to use what nature gave you, and
Yes.
not give men 8,000 nerve endings. So you have those. You can start to understand how that works and start to use that to your benefit.
Wow. Okay. So I am sure that anyone listening now, you have piqued some interest. You've delivered above and beyond so much great information for, women that are just trying to navigate all these different changes that can happen each month. And then additionally, on a day-to-day basis, what that breaks down to, and even to things like this orgasmic plateau, which I'm sure many, many women have not even gotten connected to what that could even look like for themselves in their lives on a regular basis, and how, the connections and drawing the connections between things like this and how that can really, really improve and shift the regularity and reliability of their sleep. And that is what so many people are after. So I would love to share all the ways that people can learn more about you, get quickly involved. Even just that article alone and your stance alone on coffee, I think is bold and important. And that's just going to pique the interest to begin. And people are going to want to absolutely get your app and all the things. So share all the ways that they can be a part of what you got going on.
Sure. Well, if you're having any hormone issues of any sort, come on over to FloLiving.com. That's FLO living.com. And our Flow coaches and our programs and our products are there to help you get out of hormonal chaos and get back into hormonal flow. So that's, again, from wherever you are in the world. We built the world's first modern menstrual health care company that has been 100% virtual since 2012, which now in today's environment is something more important than ever before. And then the app, as I mentioned before, is myflowtracker.com. And that's available for both Android and iTunes. And the books are Woman Code and In the Flow, and they're sold wherever books are sold. If you want to get all the special bonuses, because we just launched In the Flow at the end of January of 2020, if you want to get all the bonuses from that, you want to go to intheflowbook.com and enter in your purchase code, and you'll get all these great bonuses when you do. You can learn you can learn what your period type is on our homepage of FloLiving.com, which is a really amazing free tool that we have. On the In the Flow book website, there's to assess your biological rhythm disruption level. There's a quiz for that, so you can understand what you're doing that might be disrupting things. And then if you want to connect with us on social, you can do that at FloLiving and at alisa.vitti.
Wow. Well, thank you so, so much. You're doing something that's so important for the planet, particularly right now with what so many people are going through, just abnormal levels of stress and anxiety and difficulty, specifically in this conversation with sleeping. And, what you're creating and offering is just so needed. So thank you so much for taking the time to go a little bit deeper on this topic with us. We really appreciate it.
My pleasure, Molly.
You've been listening to the Sleep is a Skill podcast, the #1 podcast for people who want to take their sleep skills to the next level. Every Monday, I send out something that I call Molly's Monday Obsessions, containing everything that I'm obsessing over in the world of sleep. Head on over to sleepisaskill.com to sign up.